everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of the DNMC podcast. My name is William Kenlon, and I'm here with Meghan, and we are talking to our wonderful composer, singer, community member, Ashi Day.
Yeah. So nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So what are you all doing this is kind of a sort of happy hour kind of occasion, so anyone having a festive beverage for the occasion?
I have a wonderful glass of water. Important to stay hydrated.
That's the right thing to do.
I'm with you. I have a wonderful glass of water.
I'm having a Day Crusher Session Sour, which it is just pointed out to me before we started recording is like very appropriate for who our guest is today, Ashi Day. So cheers to that.
Yeah.
Things that hurt my feelings the whole time.
You're crushed. Well, one of the reasons that we're interested in having you on the podcast to chat is that you've been such an integral part of the DC composing and performing community for a while. So I thought I might kick off our conversation by just asking how you ended up in the area and how you've been spending your time since you've been here.
Sure. So I moved to DC in 2012. And it was right after I finished a graduate program in the arts and education. Before that, I was teaching in Miami. So then I was in Boston for a year in grad school. And then I applied to a bunch of jobs in Boston. And my mom said, you should apply to a job at the Kennedy Center. And then you won't live 8 hours away. You'll only live like an hour and a half away. And I said, sure, but I'm not going to get hired there. But I was. But yeah, so I've been with the Kennedy Center this whole time in a couple different iterations of my original work. I do a lot of work with the Washington National Opera education programs and other music education programs, which is nice. It's nice that I get to play with different genres. I have a church job that I've had at the same time, and then otherwise I'm trying to make art whenever I can.
So I think something that is really interesting to me about your career, just learning a little bit about you more, is that you've done a lot in education. And so I really enjoy that part of my career, and I'm just wondering if there's any highlights of your teaching career. I was reading that you taught in the public school system in many different areas, and or if you wanted to just talk a little bit about that, I'd love to learn more about it. Yeah.
Sure. So I taught in Miami-Dade public schools for 3 years, and then in charter school, public school in Fort Lauderdale for 2 years. That were very different experiences. I taught 5th grade for my first year, and then I was moved to music, which was a big relief to me. Talking about what I knew about. And it was an interesting experience that I would not change, but I did it through Teach for America, and that was, I'm not sure how I feel about everything about that. I learned a lot and met many good people, but I had a lot of wonderful experiences. When I was first teaching, they placed me in 5th grade, and it was the first time in my life that I wasn't doing art all day, every day. And so there was like this weirdness where I was like, I don't know what to say to people that aren't talking about solfege. Like
that's Westminster Choir College right there.
And then I remember I started subbing at this church and singing for the first time in a couple of months, and just being so overwhelmed when I would do it, and wanting to figure out, like, how can I be useful? How can I give back to the community? Like, that sounds cheesy, but because I'd had this experience at Westminster that felt so luxurious to just talk about choir and make art all the time. And I wanted to make of that a pathway for other people. And in education, just like general elementary education is such this huge need. The point is, once I was able to switch to music, it was this big like psychological relief of like, okay, I can do the thing that I care about, and it's still just as important as addressing the quote unquote biggest need. And my 23-year-old self had to learn that.
Working with the Kennedy Center, do you feel like there's opportunity to give to the DC community
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's nothing that I do at the Kennedy Center that doesn't have a million people's hands in it. So it's all very, very collaborative, and it's really exciting to be small parts of really cool projects, a bigger part of other really cool projects. I've worked with a summer program for high school students who want to go into opera the whole time I've been here. And it's a national program, but about half of our kids are usually from DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I've gotten to see people figure out kind of what they want to do with this talent and this interest that they have. And that's an evolving field that is a really interesting thing to work on. And you can see how it pays off in certain ways. I'm one of many people that helps coordinate dress rehearsal attendance for like Washington National Opera shows. So you get to see people coming to dress rehearsals, coming to productions that are specifically meant for kids, and you see kids cheering on opera, and it's really exciting. And right now in my position, I have a little bit more ability to have more input into curating. And so I can try to do my best to bring ideas of, are we making sure that every kid in this area is going to see themselves represented on this stage? And how can we do that through our education programming, which is a sliver of what the Kennedy Center does, but to do our best in that way. So that's been a really exciting and really fulfilling thing.
Well, it must be very different from teaching. You said your first gig in Miami was teaching general elementary school? Mm-hmm. So how long did it take you to get into teaching music to that age group?
I taught fifth grade for 1 year, and then the music teacher at our school retired, and they put me into the music position. So then I taught music for 2 more years, and then at a different school for 2 more years.
Okay.
And my most successful thing as a fifth grade teacher was singing a song with the class about different ways we use O-U-G-H in spelling to She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain. Very popular.
It's a big hit.
Yeah. I have to tell you, one of the things that I remember from 8th grade to this day are my prepositions, because my 8th grade teacher, we sang our prepositions. So I bet those students still sing "You'll Be Coming Around the Mountain" with those words. So.
Someone told me that you could sing your 3 times tables to I Want It That Way by the Backstreet Boys. So then I was like, well, what else can we do? So I came up with how to sing 6s to, I don't know, some NSYNC song that like the kids didn't know, but it's so catchy. And then the 7s to, what's the Boys to Men song? Like, da-da-da-da, End of the Road. That was the big hit. So we would all like that was the other like exciting thing about teaching, is like, as much as it was not an easy situation where I was, for me somewhat, but for the kids either. But when we were all singing a song, we were all so happy, and it feels cheesy to say, but you felt that moment where music makes you be able to connect in ways that you can't it's hard to do through other means.
Yeah. Well, it seems nice now that you're still around students and experiencing that joy and that connection.
But now I don't have to figure out bathroom breaks.
That's right. No line leaders. Well, that's a plus.
Well, I'm curious, has the educational work that you have done and continue to do at the Kennedy Center, like, does that affect your creative practice, or does that like play into the music that you write?
That's a great question. One of the reasons I wanted to stop teaching is because I felt like I wasn't writing. Well, I wasn't writing when I was teaching. A lot of the music I wrote when I was younger, especially the music that I still really like, was very silly, and very playful. And I don't think it helped me as an artist to have to be the adult in the room all the time. So between that and then just adapting to, I definitely was experiencing some culture shock when I first moved there, adapting to that, and then trying to put creativity into lesson plans. Like, I ran out of ideas, and it felt like when I left teaching, I had to rehabilitate my artistic practice. And took me, that started when I went back to grad school and is still continuing. So right now, one of the things that comes up is that I do some work that works with children's books authors and things like that, and I get to hear their ideas and think about their children's literature sort of ideas around humor and helping kids understand and things like that. And I feel like a lot of the work that I do, even though I'm not writing it for kids, a lot of it is still appropriate for kids, and I worry that it will be like put in the corner as for kids instead of for everybody. But because those same kind of qualities of like the way that kids look at the world, the way that kids are open to humor and stuff like that, I want to dig into that for grown-ups. I want to dig into how fairy tales are relevant for grown-ups. I want people to feel like they can be silly. I want humor to be that bridge between things. So that, it all plays in, as in it's all stuff that's kind of in the background of my head. And so my work allows me to kind of think about things in different ways that stay in the background and are there when I need them as a creator myself.
Well, I think that's a really natural segue to another question that I think Meghan had about some of the subjects of your text.
Oh, yeah. You do write about animals, or you have in the past quite a bit. I was just wondering if it's solely because, right, you're like trying to connect with that like feeling of, of like exploration, or that like more like that curious inner child kind of. If you have a dog, what kind of dog you have, on a less serious note?
I can grab him.
Please.
Yeah, because I'm an animal lover. I would love to meet your dog. Oh my gosh.
Look at that.
Perfect.
Look at those Yoda ears.
Big ears.
Oh my goodness. What's their name?
Ollie.
Ollie?
So far written 2 songs for him.
Perfect.
Very
Perfect.
Nice. All right, we got to use that screenshot as the thumbnail for this. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
I know. Listen, Ollie deserves it. Ollie deserves every ounce of love, I think. We're big animal lovers here.
So For Whom the Dog Tolls is the first piece of yours that I heard. And I think we actually talked about this a little bit at the Stage Free happy hour a few weeks ago. I was struck by how you managed to blend the fact that it's absolutely hilarious with the fact that I also was like brought to tears by the part near the end where the dog character is saying, say it, am I a good dog? And it was just like the most perfect encapsulation of how much the character of the dog just needs your approval so badly that I was almost brought to tears by it. And I have consistently by your work been impressed by how it really is just from the ridiculous to the sublime, just like I'm laughing out loud and then I'm crying in the same piece. So I love that you're able to use that, that I guess to some extent the background you have in education and working with younger students to bring those extremes into your music.
Thanks.
Yeah, that wasn't much of a question, so sorry, but yeah. I'm curious, 'cause I don't really know what I guess I could have looked at your chronological work list. Sorry, I'm a bad researcher. But I mean, from your point of view, from the inside, how, if we were to look at a chronological, list of works, how would you say your work has developed since the, Westminster days?
Yeah, like I said, at Westminster, I wrote, I was so spoiled because everybody there can sing anything, sort of hands off anything. So I wrote all these hard things that a lot of them I still really like. And then all of a sudden I was teaching and I was not around musicians as much, not nearly as much, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I do feel like my art just plummeted. And so when I started writing again, I wrote little bits here and there, but when I really started writing again, I felt like my options were for mostly for church choirs, since that's my whole family is church musicians, and a lot of my friends are too from Westminster, and I'm a church musician, so I felt like that was the place where I could get something done. And that's great because there's so many interesting topics that are related to that. it's nice to create things that are functional and meaningful to people and that can be performed. I really believe that music can be really good for any level of performer. And so that was a chance to experience that. But it was also still very much a box. And so very slowly, I've been able to play more outside of that box. But I'm a singer. I've never been able to play any instruments really. So everything I do is through this kind of vocal music lens. And it's been exciting to go from doing art songs, like I have an art song about a kangaroo, and choral pieces. I have a choral setting of the Lobster Quadrille from Alice in Wonderland. So like these like story pieces, but that are in short increments. I've been starting to play with bigger stories. And so like the dog opera was the first like complete story instead of a snippet of a story, or an art song I would see as like a snippet of a character. So it's like a whole story in one. And so I've been playing more with that, and I've fortunately had opportunities to start meeting more collaborators and having opportunities to have things done that are letting me dig into more storytelling things, more adventurous writing, writing that can be done by crazy people who will try stuff. I have been working on this opera that's why this is in the background. This is my like thinking board, and it's all about the devil, so I look like an insane person. About witches. But I have asked a Balance campaign to help me think about the instrumentation. I don't know if we'll collaborate more than that, because I don't want them to feel obliged to me, but I'm really excited that they're going to help me at least think about some of instrument writing, since I've been writing for choirs for so long. And I did work with a program in LA called the Neo Voice Festival, where they took composers and singers and played around with like all different kinds of vocal techniques and collaboratively made an oratorio together that was really interesting. And then of course I love working with Artifice, because they're just what a wonderful group of human beings, and I'm so excited that it exists in DC and that I met Casey when I did, so that I can be part of it. And I can't wait for us to be able to start doing things again.
Same.
I know Balance Campaign is pretty excited about the opera, and I'm really curious about what inspired the whole interaction with the singer and the audience. I think that really like piqued everyone's interest.
So I'm working on a short opera, probably like 20 to 30 minutes, for countertenor and barrel ensemble. And the working title for it is Waking the Witch. And I could talk about this for like 5 hours, so you might have to do a lot of editing. But the genesis of it was Min Song Kim is this wonderful countertenor, and he's actually the alto section leader at my church job. And we were talking, and the idea was that I should write something for him. And so I asked him, when I'm working with singers, I like to ask them, what are the things you want to do that you don't normally get to do because the roles aren't written for you? And that's a whole thing with the dog opera. It was really important to me to write for soprano in a way that there was no victimization and that she was happy and victorious the whole time. I know dog opera does not seem like a feminist or issue-oriented piece, but to me, I am tired of sopranos having to embody victims all the time, and so I was like, we're not doing it. But so for this piece, I don't know exactly what else I was looking at, but the idea of doing something around witch finders, people who made it their business to identify and help persecute witches throughout the 15 to 1500s and 1600s in Europe. Like, what was that personality like? And so then the question was, if we're doing a scene with one person, what what could be a story in a scene. And the idea was that it could be the interrogation between the witch finder and the person who has been accused of being a witch, where he is trying to draw out information from them. And so, if you're accused of being a witch at this time, like, you are in a situation where there's not a lot that you can say that is going to help your case, because if you say you did it, you're done for. If you say you didn't do it, that's probably also the devil. So it's a really tight, it's that thing where there's nothing you can say to convince people. So having the audience either be in a position where they're resisting saying anything because not saying something might actually be the best thing, or in a situation where they know no matter what they say, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change the script of what the singer is saying, because he has already decided what's happening in this situation. I thought that could be interesting. And I also didn't want to do something where any other character on the stage was actually like being really terribly treated. And that's something I'm kind of trying to manage while I'm writing it. Again, with opera, I'm thinking a lot about what are the things that we ask women as performers or as audience members to experience all the time. So when I'm watching an opera, a lot of the time, the character I most identify with is being horribly manipulated. And no matter how beautiful the music is, sometimes I can't handle it. And so I'm trying to think, like, how do I have this where the audience is seeing what's happening, but isn't, like, I don't want to get into re-traumatizing in any way. And so I'm trying to figure out the tone as I'm writing it, and that's part of the reason it's taken me so long.
That's a great introduction to the piece. It sounds like a fascinating breaking of the fourth wall kind of situation that I feel like I don't see that often, but maybe I haven't been watching the right things.
I'm really excited about it. I think it sounds really unique.
Such a fascinating topic. And so with witch hunts, a lot of times what happened was there was torture, and I don't want to torture anybody. So in England, there was a law that you weren't allowed to torture people, but they considered sleep deprivation to be not torture. So there's the famous witch hunter called Matthew Hopkins, who dubbed himself the Witchfinder General, and he's probably the main inspiration for this character, although there's other people too. Named himself the Witchfinder General, went around to rural villages in England identifying witches and building the case for them that would then follow them to trial, by basically taking mostly women, mostly poor women, and keeping them from sleep until they were hallucinating, and probably some of the people in the interrogation were hallucinating too. And then they believed that all this kinds of stuff happened, and they would say all kinds of crazy things. But it gives me the convention of saying walk and talking about waking up, which I think is a good kind of dramatic convention. And then it lets me not physically torture anybody, and it lets us go more and more absurd as people involved are getting more and more sleep deprived. So hopefully what I write will follow up all these ideas, because I haven't written that much music for it yet.
Well, I'm excited to hear it and see it. And yeah, it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, the more there's just all these overlaps into things that are happening now. There's the idea of, who do you believe when people are saying you're lying, no, you're lying, you're making false accusations, no, you are. Like, how do you sort through that? And then there's just the idea that there are so many people, so many groups of people who historically are in a situation where no matter what they say, they're not going to be really believed by people who are in power and who are very closely identifying with righteousness. And so the more I worked on this, like, I thought at first it was about women, and now I'm seeing that it's about other things too. And it's just been really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it speaks to today. I'd be interested in being an audience member, and but in multiple audiences. Like, how would your experience change depending on who's sitting in the audience, and how other people react? It's really a very cool project.
So I know some other operatic things you've had in the pipeline. Like a recent social media post you had was about being a finalist for this thing for the Mass Opera and New Opera Workshop. Is that this project, or is that a different project, or what's that one?
Yeah, that's a different project, and I encourage everyone to go to the Mass Opera website, because all the finalists' synopses for their proposals are there, and there's some really cool projects that are up there by some really cool artists. But this one is an idea that I'm still working on my pitch of how to say this succinctly. But the idea would be two sopranos, and it would be a comic opera, and it would be a battle to the death. So there is this Virginia Woolf gave this speech, and there's this famous kind of metaphor that she did where she imagines herself as a young writer, and she imagines this phantom coming into the home that she called The Angel in the House, and that's the name of a famous Victorian poem that was all about the ideal woman, and it was very repressive. And so she imagines this phantom coming in, and as she's trying to sit down and write, the phantom's whispering in her ear, don't be too harsh, don't, like, men won't respond to that, you have to be kind, you have to soften your edges, all these things. And she says, I killed her, and if I hadn't killed her, she would have killed me. She died hard because she was like a phantom, and I don't regret it. And so the idea is that it would be an imagining of this long extracted death battle where you're trying to overcome these voices in your head that are not great for becoming a worker. And it could be an artist, but it could be all kinds of work. And, you know, at the end, spoiler, she's gonna win, the woman's gonna win, but you know, you look around at the end, the room is hopefully like in tatters, and she's in tatters, and no work has gotten done, and how much time has gone by, and just using hopefully comedy to drill that home and just make something that's like delightful. Like, I love the idea of writing a very sweet voice, very evil soprano character.
I love it. That sounds like a fantastic concept. Yeah. I mean, it also kind of feels like me trying to write music every day. I'm in tatters. The room's in tatters.
Yeah.
But I love that I think this reflects why we, you know, speaking as a white man composer, we just need fewer white man composers out there. Because, like, you know, I had never honestly thought about what you were saying earlier about, like, the character who you maybe most identify with is being horribly manipulated, or, you know, having these other terrible things happen in the course of, like, every story they appear in. And, like, I don't feel like I necessarily, I mean, maybe this is my problem, but, like, I don't feel like I could have thought of this idea, particularly with this Angel in the House idea. Like, that's not an opera I could write, so I'm glad we have someone who can write it and does write that kind of thing so beautifully.
Yeah, and it's something I think about a lot, because it's true for women, it's true for people of color, I think, especially in opera, in that there's a lot of things that border on drama porn. There's a lot of things that are just very serious, and those stories are important, and I don't mean to undercut them. But I think we also need to be telling stories in ways that are joyful. I think we need to be using humor humor is disarming. Humor is a way to break tension. Humor is a way to make yourself open to things you would not accept. We accept a lot of absurdity in humor that we don't in other places. And I want the art world as a whole to be willing to take more comic things more seriously. And so the witch opera is not that, but hopefully a lot of things I can work on will be that.
Another project that a piece that you've composed that I thought, I was talking to William about it, something that I just thought was really awesome is it's
Eelgrass.
Okay. Love that piece, because I love all of the layering of voices, and I'm just really interested in your process.
Yeah, so I've written very little non-live music. I feel like I'm still in that choir opera world where we're like, we don't need electronics. Trying to get over that. But that I wrote that piece in GarageBand. I'm not really a very skilled electronic music person. So I was just trying to
That's
see.
impressive.
Yeah, you could have fooled me. I mean, that could have been in Logic or Pro Tools or anything.
That's amazing.
It was really my should I buy Logic or Pro Tools? Let me see what I can do and if I'm into it. And so I did buy Logic, and I barely understand it. So yeah, I used my Zoom recorder and I sang into it, and I sang a bunch of variations, and I kind of had a plan of how it would sound, but I also just mixed improvising and then playing around with the things that I improvised to have it. I love Edna St. Vincent Millay, so I wanted to set that poem, and I'm not sure what else to say about it other than you'd be surprised. There's a middle C pedal, and you'd be surprised how many times that's the thing I had to record the most because I kept going out of tune.
Long notes are hard.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And your voice is the only sonic element in that, right? There's no pads or any synthesizers or anything. Yeah.
No, because I don't know how to use those things, and
I love the honesty. So
yeah, I mean, there's like I have it filtered so I'm dropped down an octave, and I have a lot of reverb because I like overdoing reverb. I like the sound of it, and also because if you mess up, reverb covers it. So,
Don't
be too honest about it there.
Actually, I have another question. Another piece that I really I think is it Greenchild or no? Yeah, with Whistling Hen. You work with Whistling Hens quite a bit, right? That's fairy tale based. I love the interplay between the vocalist and the clarinetist in that piece. I think it's really beautiful, and I would imagine it seems like a difficult pairing to write for, or it could be, or I'm just curious what it was like writing for clarinet and soprano, and because the piece is just lovely.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed writing that piece for them a lot. I wrote something for them real quick called Thursday that was like, it's like a minute long. So I'd already had the experience of sending them something and getting some feedback and knowing a little bit about how they worked as a group. So that was helpful. And Natalie gave me a lot of tips about what she wanted to do, down to like, I don't like this note, I think it sounds unstable, or I can do this, but only up in this range and I hate it, so don't ask me unless it's like really important. Like, and I love this and that kind of stuff, which was really helpful and also has a lot of correlations with singing, I think. I found the clarinet, like I said, I don't write a lot for instruments. It's an area where I'm working on. But clarinet was a little less hard because I did play the oboe in high school. So just like woodwinds in general were not quite so different for me. And then I think the clarinet has a lot of overlap with the voice, or at least with my voice, in that it's you got the lower register that's very like kind of mellow and almost sweet sounding, and then you have a really horrible break, which I also have, and then you go into like your kind of normal register. There's real terms that clarinetists use for this. That's like brighter and kind of easy, and then you have the high part, which can get real shrill and real loud, which also is my voice. So that similarity, even though the ranges were a little different than the human voice, made it pretty logical for me to write for, in a way that like strings, like you don't blow into it to make sound. That's strange to me.
But now that you know these things from Natalie Groom, fantastic clarinetist, go Terps also, you can refer to your low register of your voice as the Chalumeau and your bright register as the Clarino, and everyone will know what you mean now. But I've always found duo music hard to write. I find, even though obviously there are usually more notes involved, like I find writing for voice and piano much easier than writing for voice and an instrument, or two, single note instruments, because harmony, you're just kind of stuck with like, well, how this is, I mean, for me anyway, it's like, well, how do I know which one I'm supposed to listen to at any given time? Because like you don't want to write one really boring part, because then someone's playing boring music, but you don't want to write two super intricate parts all the time, because then no one knows which part they're listening to or what the main voice is. I mean, maybe with a voice and wind duo, you listen to the one that has the words, I guess. But I think it's a tough thing to manage. But you seem to have pulled it off. I mean, what was your approach to defeating the difficulties of two-note music?
Yeah, my approach, and I think there's many people who do this much more than I have and have figured out much more, but my approach was to do two different pieces that were both character-driven pieces. So clarinet was a character in each of those ones, and they were saying specific things at specific moments the same way that the voice was. And so the music then was guided by what do they need to say, what is the drama of the moment that needs to happen, and that made the choices a lot easier. So that's what was driving the line. And then sometimes I was like, we need a B here so the soprano knows where to come in, and so that it sounds major-ish or minor-ish or whatever, but for the most part my tack was to make them both characters.
Yeah, it comes through, it's very conversational, and it's fun. It's very fun to listen to. But I feel like a lot of your music does it tells a story. And I think some of your pieces were based on Shakespeare, right? Isn't that one of the pieces dedicated to your dog?
I at the moment just finished a second Shakespeare piece dedicated to my dog.
Yeah. That's wonderful. You made my night.
Yeah. I've been kind of playing with this idea of doing a set of Shakespeare pieces that are all for choir or ish and like weird ways. So like one of the ideas is for like a installation surround sound type of piece, which is a terrible COVID idea, but let's all stand in a circle and sing at somebody. Then there's one that I wrote for and then there's two that are for the dog. And so the first one is to Tanya's lines to Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream, where she's in love with him and is saying things like, and I'll kiss thy fair large ears and stuff like that, which I just thought was, when I first got him, that's like the line that popped into my head because I love that play. And then she says, oh, how I love you, how I dote on you, which is just like how you feel when you're petting your dogs. But then the one I just finished, which, it only exists as sheet music right now and probably needs a lot of rewriting, but it's there's a line that Helena says also in Midnight Summer where she says, I'll follow thee and make a heaven of hell. And early in the pandemic, we were working from home and everybody's miserable, but like for the dog, all of a sudden the only two people he trusts, he's a rescue and he has a lot of issue, the only people he trusts are home with him all the time and sitting outside with him, and he's spending all day with his people sitting in the sunshine, and he's just happy as could be. And just the line like make a heaven came into my head, and so the only words in the piece are make a heaven, and the idea was to write it so that it could be performed by live choir or by like Zoom live, because you don't have to line up the parts and it's like quasi aleatoric and quasi improvisatory and just one of these things at this time and then change it, that kind of piece. And hopefully it will be pretty when I actually get to hear it at some point.
Well, can we perform it right now? We're on Zoom.
Nobody wants to hear me sing, that's for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it live and or on Zoom. So, speaking of Shakespeare, as we were a moment ago, I mean, so some of the texts you're working with obviously are by people who've been dead for a long time. I'm assuming the which one is more or less of your own crafting, adapted from very, very old texts.
Yeah, it's I'm writing it, but I have done a lot of research because it's so interesting, and there's a lot of like specific language that I am paraphrasing as I go, but it's not adapting any specific text. It's more just trying to absorb the language. Because
you have in your operas, right, you've writing your roles for sopranos, you've talked about like making because as women we identify with like these tragic characters, and you've made a big part of what you do as a composer, writing such positive roles for women in opera. I'm just wondering if you have any advice for women, entering the music field.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I felt like I had something more like nice and thoughtful to say, but I think it's really important to build the skills to create your own things, and that if you can't find an opportunity, to try to find ways to make those opportunities. I feel like that's hard for me. I'm very much the type of person that's like, I like to apply for things and go through a program. And so it's, to build stuff myself it's not in my nature that much, and I can be real shy about it. But the more confident I am about that, the more doors feel open. And I think that's important for everybody. And I think it's important for artists of all kinds, not just composers, but for singers and things like that too. The summer programs that I do, we have 100 applicants, 75 of them will be sopranos. So it's tough out there. And I think we need to think about how can we find ways to create work and create interesting things that speak to people, and not completely rely on institutions or rely on existing rep. Not that those things aren't part of the ecosystem, but just not to see them as the only thing. I would say I really strongly believe that your status as an artist does not depend on whether or not you have a day job. As someone who has taught, as someone who's an administrator, there's very, very important, smart, passionate, dedicated people in those fields who are shaping things to the best of their ability. And I know that there's a lot of problems with our arts institutions, and we need to look at that as a system. But I also know that there's a lot of really good people that don't always get any kind of public recognition, despite being really, really integral to cool things and good things that have happened. And so I want to value anyone who is willing to do the unglamorous part of creating art. And if you have to do anything else, whether it's working in food service, whether it's retail, whatever it is, to be able to live and feed yourself and also make your art, no one should ever make you feel bad about that. That would be an important thing to say. And then the other thing is that, the people who are my age and older, and even people a little younger than me, we don't know that much. So the people who are young are incredibly smart, and if they listen to each other, and if they don't let themselves see barriers when there's opportunities, then if when we listen to them, then we're going to be in a lot better shape. When I'm working with these career development programs, a lot of what I feel like I need to do is make sure students are finding, more and more, I feel like I need to make sure students are finding a way to talk to each other and explore their own ideas, and not worry so much about what this so-called great voice has to say. Again, it's not in a that's a bad thing way, because we've worked with wonderful artists who have said wonderful and eye-opening and amazing things. But what the students have to offer themselves is often just as profound and important, and we need to make sure that we're creating space for that if that's our role. And if you're younger, then find ways to create that space and find places that will help you make it and build the art world that should exist, not survive the one that we're in.
I don't know if I can really top that in terms of a closing statement.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we can end on an optimistic note. At least our students will hopefully get it right.
That's right.
We'll keep planting the good seeds, Ashi, and I think you're crushing it.
That's lovely.
There you go. Turn it around. Thanks everyone watching on YouTube, etc., for tuning in. Ashi, where can we find your music and more about you online?
So my website is ashiday.com, but there's a hyphen between Ashi and Day because some artist somewhere else has ashiday.com. So yeah, www.ashi-day.com. I'm on Facebook I'm on Instagram, but it's mostly dog pictures, which might be the most interesting thing.
Awesome.
Well, everyone go check out Ashi and her music. And I don't want to plug DNMC too much. This is our channel. Subscribe to it, and you can hear more conversations like this. So, best to all.